Good evening, and I want to start with something that I believe most people over 60 have never genuinely considered. The food you eat in those final 90 minutes before you go to sleep is either quietly depriving your brain of what it needs most, or actively giving it the raw materials to repair itself at a level most people assume is simply no longer possible after a certain age. I'm not talking about supplements. I'm not talking about anything exotic or expensive. I'm talking about real, available, affordable food. Food that researchers at some of the most respected neuroscience institutions in the world have now shown can rebuild memory circuits, reduce brain inflammation, and stimulate the growth of new neural connections during the very hours you are asleep. My name is Dr. Pardip. I have spent more than 30 years studying the relationship between nutrition and the aging body at a cellular level. And what I'm about to share with you tonight is drawn from the most common thinking in nutritional neuroscience, the kind of evidence that simply does not make it into a 10-minute appointment. Most people over 60 are unknowingly depriving their brains of critical nutritional support at the exact moment the brain is most ready to use it. Tonight, that changes for you. Before we get into the countdown, I need to tell you one thing. The food at number 1 on this list, the single most powerful brain-repairing food you can eat before bed, is something a remarkable number of adults over 65 have been quietly discouraged from eating. I will reveal it at the end, and I am confident it will surprise you. Stay with me through all 5 because that final one is the one I recommend most urgently to my own patients. And before we begin, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below right now and tell me your age and whether you have noticed changes in your memory or mental clarity in recent years. I read every comment personally. Your experience helps me understand who I am speaking to and what matters most to this community. Now let us count down from 5 to 1. Number 5 is tart cherry juice. Most people think of cherries as a seasonal fruit, a sweet summer treat. But Montmorency tart cherries, a specific variety, contain one of the highest concentrations of naturally occurring melatonin found in any food, alongside a class of deeply active anti-inflammatory compounds called anthocyanins that have a remarkable and specific effect on aging brain tissue. Here is the science in plain terms. As we age, our brains accumulate what researchers call neuroinflammation, a chronic, low-grade inflammatory state within the brain itself. Picture neuroinflammation as scar tissue slowly forming around the brain's communication networks. The signals still travel, but with increasing difficulty. Connections slow. Memory retrieval becomes effortful. New memories form incompletely. After 70, neuroinflammation increases significantly in most people and is now considered by leading researchers to be one of the primary mechanisms behind age-related cognitive decline, not simply an unavoidable feature of aging, but a biological process that is partly addressable. Tart cherry juice approaches this problem from 2 directions at once. The anthocyanins it contains are among a small number of dietary compounds capable of crossing the blood-brain barrier, the highly selective filter that surrounds and protects the brain from most substances in the bloodstream. Once inside, they suppress specific inflammatory proteins that directly damage the neurons involved in memory storage and retrieval. Simultaneously, the natural melatonin in tart cherry juice supports deeper, slow-wave sleep, the specific stage during which your brain performs its most intensive memory consolidation and cellular repair. A study published in the European Journal of Nutrition found that adults over 65 who consumed tart cherry juice nightly for 12 weeks showed meaningful improvements in sleep efficiency and significantly better performance on episodic memory tests, the kind of memory that governs your ability to recall specific personal experiences, conversations, and events. For aging bodies specifically, this matters even more than it would for someone younger, because after 65, natural melatonin production can decline by as much as half compared to earlier in life. You are working with a fraction of the sleep-regulating chemistry you once had, which means less time in the restorative stages of sleep where brain repair actually happens. Tart cherry juice helps compensate for that deficit in a way that is gentle, natural, and carries virtually no side effects. Practical guidance: 8 ounces of pure, unsweetened Montmorency tart cherry juice 60 to 90 minutes before bed. Check the label. It should specify Montmorency tart cherry, not sweet cherry, as the two have entirely different nutritional profiles. Pair it with a small amount of healthy fat, a few walnut halves or a teaspoon of olive oil on a plain cracker. The anthocyanins in tart cherry juice are fat-soluble, meaning they absorb more efficiently in the presence of dietary fat. I will come back to walnuts at number 3, because the combination of these two items is particularly powerful. Number 4 is Greek yogurt, and specifically what happens in the aging brain when you eat it in the hours before sleep. The reason Greek yogurt earns this position is not primarily about calcium or general protein content, though both matter for older adults in their own right. It is about tryptophan, an amino acid that functions as the direct precursor to serotonin, which your brain then converts into melatonin. Think of tryptophan as the raw ingredient your brain's overnight production line needs to run at full capacity. When you eat Greek yogurt before bed, you are restocking that supply precisely when your brain is preparing to shift into repair mode. But here is the aspect that is particularly relevant for anyone over 60. There is a well-documented phenomenon in aging biology in which the body's ability to extract and utilize protein building blocks becomes less efficient with age. Research from a university in the Netherlands found that slow digesting proteins consumed in the evening, specifically casein, which is the dominant protein in Greek yogurt, are processed differently from faster proteins. Because casein digests gradually over 6 to 8 hours, it maintains a steady supply of amino acids in the bloodstream throughout the night, giving your aging metabolism a longer and more effective window to absorb what it needs. For the brain, this sustained amino acid availability means a continuous source of the compounds required to maintain and repair the synaptic connections where memories are physically stored. Every memory you hold exists as a pattern of synaptic connections. Those connections require protein-derived materials to maintain their structure. Slow digesting protein consumed before sleep is one of the most effective ways to ensure those materials are available when the brain needs them most. A study from a major American sports and nutrition university found that older adults who consumed casein protein before bed showed significantly greater overnight cognitive recovery markers compared to those who ate nothing, including improvements in what researchers termed cognitive flexibility, the brain's capacity to shift fluidly between thoughts and tasks, which is among the first abilities to decline with age. Practical guidance: 1 cup of full-fat Greek yogurt, not fat-free, approximately 45 minutes before bed. The fat content matters for nutrient absorption. You can add a small amount of raw honey, which I will discuss at number 2, or a few blueberries for additional antioxidant support. Avoid granola or anything high in refined carbohydrates, as these spike insulin at bedtime and actively interfere with the brain repair processes you are trying to support. Before we get into the top 3, I want to pause for a moment. If what you are hearing tonight is giving you information your own physician has not had time to share, please hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. I release new content every week specifically for people who are serious about protecting their cognitive health and their independence as they age. Every subscription tells me you want more of this, and it helps me reach the people who need it most. Thank you for that. Number 3 is walnuts. Not a mixed handful, not almonds or cashews, specifically walnuts. Because the reason they belong here comes down to a specific compound found in very few foods on earth with a direct documented effect on the aging human brain. Let me tell you about a patient I will call Edith. She was 76 years old, a retired nurse from the Pacific Northwest who had spent her career helping other people stay healthy and was now frightened by what was happening to her own mind. She was misplacing objects. She was losing the thread of conversations mid-sentence. She was forgetting the names of people she had known for 20 years. Her physician had told her this was simply the normal trajectory of aging. Edith began eating a small handful of walnuts each evening as part of a broader evening protocol. Within 10 weeks, she described the change with a single phrase. She said it felt like static clearing from a radio station she had almost given up on. The science behind this reflects what research in nutritional neuroscience has been showing for years. Walnuts are unique among nuts for their combination of alpha-linolenic acid, a plant-based omega-3, with high concentrations of polyphenols and a distinct antioxidant called ellagic acid. Most significantly for our purposes, walnuts are exceptionally rich in DHA precursors, which the body converts into docosahexaenoic acid, the fatty acid that constitutes approximately 60% of your brain's structural fat. Every neuron in your brain is enclosed in a membrane built largely from DHA. Every synaptic connection where memories are stored depends on DHA for structural integrity. Think of DHA as the insulation around electrical wiring. Without sufficient insulation, signals degrade, distort, and fail to reach their destination. After 65, the brain's ability to synthesize and maintain adequate DHA levels falls sharply, and most older adults are deficient without knowing it. Research published in a leading journal of nutrition and aging found that older adults who consumed walnuts regularly demonstrated meaningfully better memory scores, faster cognitive processing, and greater mental flexibility than those who did not. A study involving over 600 adults with an average age of 68 found that higher walnut intake was associated with substantially lower rates of poor cognitive function on standardized testing, a finding that deserves far more public attention than it receives. The evening timing matters specifically because of what your brain does overnight. It activates its glymphatic system, a network of channels that flushes metabolic waste, including the amyloid proteins associated with Alzheimer's disease, from brain tissue during deep sleep. This flushing process requires healthy, DHA-rich brain cell membranes to function efficiently. Eating walnuts before bed ensures that the building materials for those membranes are circulating in your bloodstream at precisely the moment the overnight cleaning system is most active. Practical guidance: 1 to 1.5 ounces of raw or dry roasted walnuts, approximately 14 walnut halves, 60 minutes before sleep. Avoid oil roasted or salted varieties. Pair them with your tart cherry juice from number 5. The combination of anthocyanins and walnut polyphenols creates a compounded anti-inflammatory effect in the brain that is meaningfully greater than either produces alone. Number 2 is raw honey. And I need to be specific about the type and the amount because what most people have in their pantry is not what I am recommending. Processed, pasteurized commercial honey is a different product from raw, unfiltered honey, and the difference is biologically significant. Raw honey, particularly local wildflower honey or manuka honey, contains a flavonoid compound that has been shown in research to promote the growth of new neurons in the hippocampus, the region of the brain most directly responsible for forming and storing new memories. The ability to generate new brain cells, a process called neurogenesis, was once believed to stop in early adulthood. The research now shows clearly that it continues throughout life in the hippocampus, and that it can be both accelerated and suppressed by what you eat. Raw honey accelerates it. Heavily processed sugar does the opposite. For anyone over 65, this matters profoundly. After 75, the hippocampus shrinks at a measurable rate in the absence of active protective measures. And that shrinkage correlates directly with the kind of memory loss most people fear most: forgetting conversations, appointments, the names of the people they love. Research from a National Brain Research Center found that regular raw honey consumption was associated with meaningfully elevated levels of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, which is essentially the brain's own growth and repair protein. Adults over 60 typically have BDNF levels 30 to 40% lower than younger adults. Raw honey helps restore them. There is also the matter of cortisol. Elevated cortisol at night is one of the most destructive forces in the aging brain. It directly damages hippocampal tissue with prolonged exposure and suppresses the deep sleep stages where memory consolidation occurs. Raw honey triggers a gentle, controlled insulin response that modestly lowers cortisol in the hours before sleep, creating a calmer neurochemical environment for the brain's repair work. Research from a Southeast Asian university found that subjects who consumed raw honey before bed showed significantly lower nighttime cortisol levels and meaningfully higher memory test scores the following morning compared to control groups. Practical guidance: 1 to 2 teaspoons of raw, unfiltered honey approximately 30 minutes before bed. More than 2 teaspoons can spike insulin too aggressively and reverse the benefit. The honey must be raw and unheated. Commercial pasteurization destroys the compounds responsible for neurogenesis. Look for labels reading raw and unfiltered, ideally from a local producer. Stir it into warm herbal tea below 40 degrees Celsius, as higher heat destroys the active compounds. The ideal pairing is raw honey stirred into your Greek yogurt from number 4. The casein protein slows the release of the honey's natural sugars, extending the gentle cortisol-lowering effect across more of the overnight hours. And now number 1. The most powerful brain-repairing food you can eat before bed. The one I told you most adults over 65 have been subtly discouraged from eating, and the one I consider the single most important dietary intervention for cognitive longevity I have encountered in 30 years of clinical practice. That food is fatty fish, specifically wild-caught salmon, sardines, or mackerel, eaten as a light meal approximately 2 hours before sleep. I know the hesitations. You have been cautioned about cholesterol. You have been told not to eat too close to bed. Some of you have been given a dozen reasons for restraint. I am asking you to hold those concerns for a moment and look at what the science actually demonstrates, because the gap between conventional dietary caution and the research evidence on this specific topic has rarely been wider. Wild-caught fatty fish is the most concentrated dietary source of preformed DHA and EPA, the two omega-3 fatty acids that are not merely beneficial to brain health but are structurally essential to it. Your brain is approximately 60% fat by dry weight. The most important fat in that composition is DHA. Every neuron is encased in a membrane built largely from DHA. Every synaptic connection where memories are stored requires DHA for structural integrity. Every thought you complete, every memory you retrieve depends on the health of membranes that DHA maintains. And here is the aging-specific issue that almost never gets explained clearly. After 60, the liver's ability to convert plant-based omega-3s, the kind found in walnuts and flaxseed, into the DHA your brain actually uses drops by roughly 60 to 70%. This means that for most people over 60, plant sources of omega-3 are delivering a fraction of the brain benefit they would have in earlier decades. Preformed DHA from fatty fish is the only reliable dietary route to ensuring your brain receives what it structurally requires. Research from a landmark study involving over 900 older adults found that those who ate fish at least once per week had brains that were functionally equivalent to brains 11 years younger on standardized cognitive testing compared to those who rarely ate fish. 11 years, not marginally better, a full decade of cognitive aging effectively reversed through a single dietary habit. The evening timing connects directly to the glymphatic system we discussed with walnuts. The overnight clearance of amyloid proteins and other metabolic waste from brain tissue is dramatically more efficient when brain cell membranes are rich and flexible with DHA. Researchers found that glymphatic clearance during sleep was significantly more effective in subjects with adequate DHA levels. Eating fatty fish in the evening aligns peak DHA availability in the bloodstream with the hours when the brain's overnight cleaning system is working hardest. Wild salmon also contains astaxanthin, a carotenoid antioxidant that crosses the blood-brain barrier and is among the most potent neuroprotective compounds in the nutritional literature. It targets the mitochondria inside neurons, the energy-generating structures inside every brain cell, which begin to dysfunction at an accelerating rate after 65, producing less energy and more cellular damage simultaneously. Think of aging neuronal mitochondria as power plants that generate less electricity while producing more pollution. Astaxanthin helps restore their function. Fatty fish is also among the richest sources of vitamin B12, vitamin D3, and selenium, three nutrients in which the majority of adults over 65 are clinically deficient, and all three of which play direct roles in neurological function and cognitive preservation. A study following over 1,000 adults aged 60 to 90 for 7 years found that those with the highest blood levels of omega-3 fatty acids at the outset showed dramatically less hippocampal shrinkage over the study period compared to those with the lowest levels. The hippocampus, your brain's memory center, is the structure that so many of my patients have felt quietly diminishing and have been told there is nothing to be done about. There is something to be done. Practical guidance. 4 to 5 ounces of wild-caught salmon, sardines packed in water or olive oil, or mackerel approximately 2 hours before bed. Fresh is ideal, but high-quality canned options are nutritionally equivalent and far more practical. Prepare simply, baked, steamed, or directly from the can. Avoid heavy sauces, breading, or frying, which introduce inflammatory compounds that reduce the net benefit. The synergy pairing is 1 to 2 teaspoons of raw honey taken 30 minutes after your fish. The honey's cortisol-lowering effect creates a calmer neurochemical environment in which the omega-3s can do their most effective repair work during the night. Combine fatty fish with a small handful of walnuts and 1 to 2 teaspoons of raw honey as your complete evening brain protocol, and you are giving your brain DHA for structural repair, BDNF stimulation for neuron growth, glymphatic support for overnight waste clearance, anti-inflammatory protection, and cortisol management. A coordinated, evidence-based intervention that costs less per night than a cup of coffee. The scientific references behind everything shared today are listed in the description below. Bring them to your physician and have a conversation. Now, let me leave you with the single thought I return to most often in my practice. The idea that cognitive decline after 65 is simply inevitable, that the brain is on a one-way slope and there is nothing meaningful to be done, is one of the most damaging assumptions in modern medicine. Not because it has no basis, but because when people accept it, they stop doing the things that could genuinely change their trajectory. The patients I have watched maintain their sharpness, their independence, and their full presence in their own lives well into their 80s are not people who are simply fortunate genetically. They are people who made decisions, small, daily decisions about what they gave their bodies and when. They are people, very much like you, who refuse to accept a diminished life when there were things still within their reach. It is never too late. Tell me in the comments which of these 5 foods you are going to start with tonight, and tell me your age. Subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new video. Share this with someone you love who is over 60. The information here could genuinely change where their brain is 5 years from now. Dr. Pardip signing off. Take care of that extraordinary brain of yours. It is worth every bit of this effort.